Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Adam and this is, well, I don't know what channel this is, but I think it will be an exclusive football as long as I can remember my details to the account. And today we're going to be doing a Premier League predictions video, albeit a little bit late, but we're going to do it. It's only been 1 week, so I'm hoping, well, I haven't taken that into account at all, any of those results. And we're going to be doing a Premier League predictions video, and let's see how this goes. So we'll start off with 20th place. I've written down the table here that I've made, and I've gone with Newcastle, and I'd say my bottom three is probably the most controversial in the table. Now, just looking at who Newcastle have bought in here: Joelinton, Jetro Willems, Saint-Maximin. The problem with this is there's no Premier League experience in that team, and the goals, majority of the goals last season came from Ayoze Perez and Salomon Rondon, who have both been let go by Newcastle. Rondon going back to his parent club and then going to China, as well as the big talking point, the manager, and I think that's going to be a big, that's going to have a huge effect on them. And again, they could prove me wrong if these signings come up clutch for them. I thought Joelinton did look decent for him against Arsenal last week, but I'm going to go with Newcastle 20th, and this could really bite me in the arse, but I've got a feeling Newcastle will finish in 20th. In 19th place, another, I guess you could say, controversial, and that's the Premier League's highest spenders this transfer window, and that's Aston Villa. Again, I just looked through a lot of these signings. There's not one real standout. I'd say probably the best of a bad bunch, really, and that's Tom Heaton for £8 million. Premier League experience coming in there. Probably Tyrone Mings as well. He had a good spell at Aston Villa last season in the Championship. But I just think there's too many changes within that team. And I don't want to compare it to Fulham, but I'd say it's very similar in the sense that they've got a leaky defence. They've spent the most money. And I think maybe offensively they might be decent, but I think their defence will let them down this season. And I've got a feeling that Villa will finish in the bottom three this season. Again, another prediction that could really haunt me. But I've got a feeling, and I'm going to stick to that feeling, that Villa will finish in 19th place. Then in 18th place, maybe another, I guess you could say, controversial, and that is Southampton. Again, I just look at those signings. The only signing, I mean, they bought in a player from the Belgian league. I can't pronounce his name. They bought in Che Adams for 15 million from Birmingham. Again, unproven in this league. They bought in Danny Ings, but Danny Ings, again, injury prone. They've let a lot of players go: Stephen Davis, Charlie Austin, Matt Targett. I wouldn't really say they've strengthened, really. I'd say they've got rid of some of the deadwood, but other than that, I wouldn't really say they've strengthened. And I just look at that squad, I think it's a bit light. I don't really see much goals in that team. Shane Long, very inconsistent striker. The manager, I do like the manager, but I think they will be down there this season. They'll definitely be in a relegation battle. But whether they go down, that's a different question or not. But I've got a feeling that they're going to finish in 18th place this season. In 17th place, once again, another controversial pick. And I've gone with Crystal Palace. And we'll just go through their transfer window here in terms of who they've bought in. So they've only bought in James McCarthy, Jordan Ayew, Gary Cahill, Victor Camarasa and Stephen Henderson. For me, Gary Cahill, that's probably the best signing there in terms of the Premier League experience. Jordan Ayew, who was with them last season, didn't really set the world alight. And again, they've lost one of their key players in Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who they haven't replaced. And then on top of that, their best player, Wilfred Zaha, doesn't want to play for them at the moment. But I think he will come and eventually play for them. And I think he'll be the difference in them staying up and going down this season, most definitely. But I do think they'll struggle. I look at that squad, I think it's quite weak. And I wouldn't really say it's strengthened. If anything, it may have declined a little bit. Then into 16th position, we've gone with Sheffield United, and this may come as a shock. I'm sure a lot of people will have been tipping them to go down. Now, I've seen Sheffield United in the Championship play this season, last season, sorry. And defensively, they're really good. And I think in the Premier League, you've got to have a strong defence. And I think that might be what will keep them over the line this season. The signings, I mean, on paper, they're not, they're not top signings. They look like Championship quality signings. They've brought in Lise Mousset, Callum Robinson, Ravel Morrison on his day can be a good player. Ollie McBurney, he had a good season in the Championship. Mohamed Besic, again, another top Championship player. But I think they'll have that togetherness, and I think Chris Wilder, he's one for making miracles out of a team who on paper may not look that good. You look at last season, in terms of the team they had, you would never tip that team to finish second, and they ended up finishing second and getting an automatic promotion position. And I think it would be similar here. I think a lot of people are tipping him to go down because on paper their squad isn't very good. But I think if he sticks to the way he plays with that defensive structure, albeit there's going to be more quality in the Premier League, I think he could do something this season as long as he knows his players, and that's what he prides himself on. There's that team ethic and hard work and defensive structure, and I think that'll be what will keep him up this season. Into 15th position, again similar to Sheffield United, I've gone with Norwich here, and the reason why I say it's similar to Sheffield United, you look at their signings again. There's not really any Premier League experience. They brought in Dermich from the Bundesliga. I think that's a good number 2 striker to Teemu Pukki. Ralph Foreman, he's a top goalkeeper from Schalke. Sam Byram for 750k. Again, that's peanuts in today's market. And Patrick Roberts from Man City on a season-long loan. I think what he's done, he's just addressed his key areas in terms of where he needs a squad. But the main majority of his core squad have been kept together. The likes of Marco Stiepermann, Teemu Pukki, Max Aarons, I think that's what he's called, Tim Krul. Again, a lot of those players are still there, and I think he's going to be one of those managers who will stick to the way he plays. You saw at Liverpool last week, 4-1 they lost, but second half I thought they were the better team, and they've shown that with the football they play, they can be a strong team. Again, another team I'd seen in the Championship last season. And when you watch these teams play in the Championship, you get an idea of whether you think they can cope in the Premier League. And again, similar to Sheffield United, I think they'll be able to cope in the Premier League. And I'm going to tip them for that 15th place finish. Then in 14th place, again, I'm going to go with Brighton here. And their manager is a Championship manager. He's come from the Championship, Graham Potter. Again, they're going to play more offensive and similar to the last two teams. As I said, Championship signings here. You look at Leandro Trossard, I think he's called, unknown really. Matt Clark, Adam Webster, Neil Maupay. These are Championship players. But I think they will do something this season for Brighton. And I think he will get them playing that attacking football. I think the problem last season for them was scoring goals. I thought defensively they were okay. And I think they will be more offensive, maybe at the risk of their defence. But I do think they will do something this season. I'm going to go with Brighton in 14th position. Again, a lot of Premier League experience already in there, having been in the Premier League now for 2 seasons. Then into 13th place, I did tip them to go down last season, and that is Burnley. And Burnley, you look at their signings, nothing really stand out, but Danny Drinkwater, Premier League experience, he won the title with Leicester. I think that's a big signing for them. Jay Rodriguez, come back to his hometown club. Peacock Farrell as a squad player, having lost Tom Heaton, that's a good replacement, I think. And I think it's just Sean Dyche. I think it solely comes down to the manager. You look at their squad on paper, and I think just their manager himself, I think he will keep them up this season. As much as it pains me to say it as a Blackburn fan, I do think Burnley will stay up, and I'm going to tip them for a 13th place finish. Into 12th place, I'm going to go with Watford. And they've not done, major business, but I think they've already got a good squad. They brought in Danny Welbeck on a free transfer, which I think is a good deal for them. Ismail Sarr from Rennes, he looked a decent player against Arsenal in the Europa League. But they've not made wholesale changes, but they've kept their core squad. I mean, Watford in the last few transfer windows, they've been a team who make a lot of changes, you know, be a change in a manager or a lot of outgoings and a lot of incomings. But now they're starting to settle as a squad, and I think this will pay off in the long term in terms of their plan as a Premier League club. And I think that will really settle them. I think they've got a settled manager as well in Javi Gracia, so I'm going to tip them for a 12th place finish. Into 11th place, I'm going to go with Bournemouth. Again, another team who I think are Premier League proven now. They're more or less a nailed Premier League team. They've got some top players in Callum Wilson, Ryan Fraser. They've managed to keep hold of him. That's good business by them. They bought in Championship signings again. Harry Wilson on a loan deal. Lloyd Kelly from Bristol. Philip Billing of Huddersfield. But I think they've kept their core squad together, which is important. They've not really lost any major players. Tyrone Mings, who was on loan at Villa last season, so it's not really that much of a loss for them. But I think that Bournemouth will be solid mid-table. As they have done in previous seasons, they'll go on a run where they're in 4 or 5 games, and then they'll go on a losing run where they'll lose another 4 or 5 games, which is why I don't think they'll be, you know, challenging for a Europa League spot. I think they'll be a bit short in that department, especially with the signings they've made. There's no really stand out in terms of ambition or intent that they're going to challenge for that. So I do think they'll finish in 11th place. In 10th place, West Ham United have gone with... they've put in some good signings, you've got to say. Similar to last season, I'd say. They bought in Pablo Fornals for £24 million. Their record signing, Sebastian Haller. He looks a decent player. They've lost Arnautovic. They've lost a lot of players. Andy Carroll, Adrian. They have got a top squad on paper. You look at that midfield, Lanzini, Philippe Anderson. They finally got a striker, Haller, who looks a decent player. He can hold up the ball. But I think that what holds them back is that defence. Diop is a good player, but I think the manager, I don't think he's defensively good enough as a manager. You look at Manchester City, I thought he was, defensively he wasn't very good at Manchester City, Pellegrini, and I think the defence is what will be the difference between them finishing mid-table and them finishing in a top 7, top 8 position. Then into 9th place, I've gone with Wolves. Again, Wolves have a top squad. I think you have to say that. They have got a hell of a squad, and they've added to that as well. They've tied down Jimenez and Dendoncker on permanent deals, which is massive for them. And then on top of that, they bought in Jesus Vallejo from Real Madrid on a loan deal, and the highly rated Milan young striker Patrick Cutrone. The reason why I've not tipped them for higher is because of Europa League. I think that will have an effect on their squad. I don't think they've got a big enough squad maybe to deal with that. But I do think they've got a strong enough squad to definitely finish in a mid-table position, even with the Europa League, which is why I'm going to tip Wolves for a 9th place finish. Into 8th position, I'm going to go with Leicester City. Brendan Rodgers is building something good here. You look at the signings they've made. Yuri Telemans on a permanent. He was a really good player for them in the second half of last season. They've also brought in Jose Perez, who scored a lot of goals for Newcastle last season. Dennis Pratt, highly sought after player. Probably the major loss for them is Harry Maguire. And that's why I don't think they will finish higher than 7th or 8th. There's not really one team for me that's going to challenge the top 6 teams this season. I still think they're in their own bracket at the moment. But I think Leicester are definitely making strides towards that. I think it may be just one season too early for them. But I think their defence may be just a little bit on the weak side. But offensively, they've got a hell of a squad, and I think that will put them in a solid upper mid-table finish. Into 7th position, a team that I have said in previous seasons they are reserved to this spot, and that's Everton. Some good signings. I think I will say that Andre Gomez, they've tied down on a permanent. Fabian Delph, good Premier League experience. Gbamin looks a decent player. Moise Kean, highly rated player from Juventus on a permanent without a buyback clause as well. That's a big deal. Alex Iwobi, a good player, £35 million. Again, we'll see whether he lives up to that price tag. And Sidibe from Monaco, highly rated French World Cup winner, right back. I'd say probably where they're lacking is probably centre half. They could have done with a top class centre half, and also the loss of Idrissa Gueye. He's a very important player for them. When you look at what he does for them in that midfield, very similar to Kante in terms of there's no other player like him. And I think losing him is probably what will limit them from challenging for a top 6 position this season. However, I do think they will finish very high up the table, but in 7th position. So on to the top 6. For me, it hasn't been difficult to predict. I think it's nailed on who will finish top 4, unless it's a complete disaster from one of the teams or something goes completely wrong, whether that be an injury or a manager getting sacked. But I think top 6 is pretty nailed. Maybe the order might be a bit different, but I think the top 4 and then 5th and 6th for me were easier to predict this year than they were last year. So 6th place I've gone with Chelsea. The reason being I've gone with Chelsea is, well, first of all, the transfer ban. Frank Lampard, his first season, I think he'll need a season to settle. There's a lot of changes as well in that squad. You know, they've lost Eden Hazard. That is a top player to lose. I think he's the difference between them getting Champions League and finishing outside it, as well as winning the Europa League last season. I thought he was, in the final, he was the difference for them against Arsenal. And I just think there's been a lot of change. You know, you've got players like Mason Mount, Tammy Abraham coming through, Ross Barkley, who wasn't really a mainstay last season. And I just think that there's going to be a lot of change, and it's going to take a lot of time for these players to adapt. But I do think they'll get a top 6 finish. I think they will finish in a Europa League position this season. Into 5th position, I've gone with Man United. Good defence, you've got to say. They've addressed that, Harry Maguire and Aaron Wan-Bissaka. However, the problem for them is that midfield. Other than Paul Pogba, who may go, we don't know. I think he will stay, but there's a possibility he may go come the end of the transfer window, the European transfer window. But that midfield's very weak, you know. McTominay, Fred, Pereira. It doesn't really inspire me with confidence. When you compare it to the other teams who are fighting for the top 4 positions, I think that midfield is a bit weak. So for that reason, I don't think they will get top 4. I think they could have done with a top-class midfielder, and I think that's what they're missing. On top of that, they've lost Lukaku's goals, who they haven't replaced. It's a big stepping stone for Marcus Rashford and Martial to come in and fill in with the goals. Whether they can do it, that'll be a different question. We'll see. But I think they will finish in 5th position. I think they'll finish in the Europa League. I think they'll miss out on a Champions League position. So on to the top 4, and 4th position I've gone with the classic 4th position, and that is Arsenal. Again, it was looking really bleak for them, you know, the £40 million budget. There's a lot of question marks over their owners, whether they were going to invest, and they have invested. Nicolas Pepe, I think that is a huge signing. Proven goal scorer. He had a top season in Ligue 1 for Lille. I think he was the 2nd best top goal scorer after Kylian Mbappe, which is huge. They've addressed the defence. They bought in William Saliba as a long-term option. He's gone back to Saint Etienne on loan. But as a short-term option, they bought in David Luiz. I think that's a good signing. Good Premier League experience there. Yes, he can be a bit sloppy on his day, but I think he'll bring Premier League experience and help the younger defenders around him, like Kieran Tierney, who they've also brought in. Dani Ceballos on a loan deal. I think that's a good signing as well. A really good midfielder, highly rated. He won the Under-21s championship with Spain. And I think, yes, he's not scored many career goals, but I think he'll fill in. Not to a Santi Cazorla level, but maybe similar to that in terms of transition and midfield play. I think he will bring a more structured attack to Arsenal and a more structure within the midfield, and I think he'll be a big player for them. Martinelli, a good young signing, good signing for Arsenal there. Of course, they've lost a couple of players. Alex Iwobi, Laurent Koscielny forced out a move, Danny Welbeck. But I wouldn't say there's any real big loss for them there. They've kept hold of Aubameyang and Lacazette. I don't think it's an issue for Arsenal. I think they've got a good enough squad to finish in top 4. I still think they're a little bit behind the other teams, which I'll get to now. But I do think that they've got a good enough squad to get in the top 4. Into third position, I've gone with Tottenham Hotspur. I think keeping Harry Kane, Dele Alli, Christian Eriksen, I think those are big signings for them, like a new signing. Again, we don't know. Christian Eriksen could leave. There's a possibility he could go to Madrid if Madrid pay up. But Ndombele, Lo Celso, these are good signings. Ndombele on a record signing. They didn't need to do, much business, I don't think. They've got a good enough squad. And I think they really settled under Pochettino. And for that reason, I'm going to put them in a third place finish. They're used to the stadium now. There's not really going to be any question marks over their new stadium, whether it'll affect them or not. And I think they've got just a solid core within that team to finish in a top 4 position this season. Into second place, similar to last season, I'm going to go with Liverpool. Probably what lets them down here is, yes, their squad is very strong. There's no question over that. But they've not really done any major business. There's no real big signings coming in. I think they could do with a top creative midfielder like an Isco or a Bruno Fernandes. He was available. But I think they'll finish in second position. I don't think they'll challenge this time. I don't think they'll be, last season they finished on 97 points, which was incredible. I think they'll be a bit less, maybe on about 80 odd points this season. But I do tip Liverpool to finish in second. The worrying thing for them is if an injury does happen, let's say to Mohamed Salah or Sadio Mane or Van Dijk, the cover, I'm not very convinced by that. Dejan Lovren, Shaqiri, Origi, I'm not convinced by those players if they were to come in and start every week for Liverpool. But yeah, I do think they'll finish second. I don't see them pushing City as much as they did last season, and that takes me into first place, and that's Man City. Yeah, their squad is just remarkable, really. You look at the signings they brought in. Rodri, that's a fantastic Fernandinho replacement. Should he get injured or should he be fatigued at all, given the amount of games they'll be playing this season? João Canelo as well. I think that's a good signing. £60 million. And I just think they didn't need to do too much business, and they've addressed the areas they needed to. They brought in top class players. And Man City, they are Man City. The last 2 seasons they've finished on incredible points. They've racked up 198 points over the last 2 seasons. They've got a top manager in Pep Guardiola. I mean, how can you not predict them to finish anywhere outside of the top 2? I mean, they are a top team, and I do see them making it 3 Premier League back-to-back titles. Whether you like City or not, whether you think they are oil money driven, whether you think they're ruining the league. I mean, there's a lot of speculation about that, a lot of controversy about that they're ruining the league. You can't deny they're a top team, and I just think they're a million miles away from everyone else right now. And I think with those new signings especially, I think it takes them an extra step ahead of Liverpool because they haven't strengthened. And yeah, I'm going for Man City as my Premier League champion. So these have been my Premier League predictions. Thanks for watching the video, and until next time, peace.